You're listening to Thunder Quack Podcast Network. This is the Thunder Quack Podcast, the official podcast of Thunder Quack Podcast Network, where anything can happen. So strap yourselves in and hold on to your butts. It's Thunder Quack time!
Hello and welcome back to the Thunder Quack Podcast, the official podcast of thunderquack.com, which you can get early every Tuesday over at patreon.com/thunderquack, just like our Patreon producers, Brian Murawski and JJ Samuel do, or you can be lame and you can get it late every Friday on podcast services across the galaxy. I am one of your hosts, Michael Cohen.
And I'm your other host, Amanda Conkin.
I'm just kidding. You're not lame if you wait. It's fine.
You're being sassy today.
You're just cooler if you get it early.
Oh, there we go.
You know what I mean? It's like, you're fine. You're not at 0 if you wait and get it on Friday because you listen to the podcast.
Which makes you cool inherently.
So that's a +1, right?
Yeah.
So you're already on the +1 side of cool, as opposed to the -1 side, which is lame, right? But if you give us $1 a month, then that's another +1. If you give us $5 a month, that's +5. So you're at 6 on that one, right?
Cool points.
Yeah, and so on and so forth. I think you guys can extrapolate the math on the rest of them. So Brian Murawski, JJ Samuel, they're at +21.
The coolest that you can be.
No, it's not the coolest that you can be. The coolest that you can be is Andy B, who for the longest time supported us at an exorbitantly high level. I don't even want to say it out loud because it's absurd that he did it. And I appreciate him so much for all of that support. But
he's one of the few podcast folks that I've met IRL.
Yeah,
I feel like there's only a handful. We were just talking about this. There's only a handful of folks
he supported us at that level back when there weren't the rewards weren't worth it. I think that
we're like friends with Andy now, and I feel like that's the greatest gift of all.
He absolutely bought his way into friendship with us. 100%, he did. You can do that, and that's the point. There's no shame in it. He did it. I've done it with podcasts that I like, not through money, but by doing stuff for them, like helping them with graphic design or an illustration or whatever, right? I've done that with other people. So it's,
I will say that it probably works at higher levels too. And one of the things that you should, because here's the thing, we knew exactly who hated Reboot when we were making Reboot.
Yeah.
We knew the names of the people that hated Reboot, because if you're loud enough on the internet, you're going to hurt some feelings. So be loud enough on the internet with your love, and then people will think of you fondly. Because I actually don't remember the names of the haters now, but I bet that if it was somebody that actually liked the content that we did, that I would have been more inclined to follow them back on Twitter so that I could hear all the awesome things that they were saying about our content. I mean, I'm sure that that's true I'm sure that there are back in the olden days when there was fan clubs, right? That you knew who ran the fan club of whatever it was, that if you were famous enough and you had a fan club.
Yeah.
I feel like that's got to be a thing in K-pop communities because they're so insane. What is going on with BTS though? Honestly, McDonald's meals? And I want one so badly, and I'm so mad at myself where I'm like, this is just a phenomenon taking over the world. People are trying to sell their used McDonald's bags for $200 in Vancouver buy and sell groups, and it's hilarious.
As if you can't just
I know, because I don't understand. Can't you just go buy McDonald's? Yeah. Anyways, I feel like it's gotta be.
I'm sure if you went to a McDonald's and you just said, "Hey, can I have one of those bags?" I'm gonna buy something, and you can put it in a bag, but then also, can I just have a bag?
Yeah.
That doesn't cost you. It's like it's pennies, like less, probably less than pennies. McDonald's probably makes money off of printing their bags because that's how McDonald's works as a McDonald's isn't a restaurant. In case people don't know this, McDonald's is actually a real estate venture. But
whoa,
I
interesting.
Yeah, they don't make any money off of the restaurants. That's not how they make money. They own. In a lot of, like, obviously, if it's in a mall or whatever, it's a slightly different situation. But
in which case, that's just marketing.
Like a standalone McDonald's that's just like wherever, right? With the play place and whatnot, like McDonald's Corporation owns that land and then leases it to the franchisees.
Oh, interesting.
So the incentive there is that, like, oh, well, it's like with any franchise, you are licensing the brand name of McDonald's because it's a tried and true tested brand that has value, right? As long as you run your restaurant to the standard, you should be profitable. There's I mean, like, there are factors. We don't need to get into franchises and all of the politics involved there. But the idea is that, like, if you've got the money to start a McDonald's franchise, you can have a job forever, right? Like you can be your own boss forever, basically, and make decent money doing that. But the real winner is the McDonald's Corporation, who owns the land that your restaurant is on and is leasing it to you so that you can license their brand and contribute to their wealth. It's what's the word for it? Scam, I think, is what it's called. But it's perfectly legal and it's sorry?
But like they also have to put money into franchising and to like market and publicize.
Oh, hey, it's not like it's not like it's without risk, but this is the thing. If McDonald's as a restaurant, let's say tomorrow it turns out that actually like all of the things that everybody says about McDonald's, which none of it is true, but like let's say like the pink slime, that the burgers are made of rats, like all of this stuff that people make up, all the like the things that you heard in middle school about, like, oh, gross, McDonald's, I don't eat McDonald's. And it's like, I saw you at McDonald's like yesterday, dude. Like you were scarfing nuggets like there's no tomorrow. But whatever, like act like you're cool. But all that stupid stuff that you hear from 13-year-olds who think that they know stuff about the world. 13-year-olds, oh boy. Let's say that it's all true. Tomorrow it turned out that it's all true. It's not. McDonald's, don't come after us. I'm not saying it's true. As a matter of fact, we live in Canada. McDonald's here, like grade A beef, Alberta beef, it's the same as what you're buying in the grocery store. It's perfectly fine. It's, you know, like maybe you guys could season the hamburger a little bit better. Maybe the frozen part of it's a little bit annoying. But in terms of like what the actual ingredients are, it's the same stuff that you're buying at the grocery store for yourself. They just buy a lot more of it, so they get it for way cheaper. But let's pretend for this hypothetical that happens and the McDonald's brand is toast. It's done. Like, this is the biggest scandal in American history, corporate history, right? Like, oh my God, this is proof. Everybody who's eating in McDonald's instantly just yaks and just like is done. No one's ever going back to a McDonald's restaurant ever. McDonald's as a corporation is going to take a hit for sure. But the people at the top and the corporation itself, like the corporate entity, they'll be fine because they still own all of that land, and that's where all of the actual value is. And so, yeah, like McDonald's is that's what you're. I mean, like you're also, when you buy McDonald's, you're also contributing to the economy in the sense that like lots of people work at McDonald's, right?
That's
lots
my first
of
job, eh?
There you go. Like, it's like, and like, again, like we're unpacking all this stuff. It's weird, right? This is not what we were going to talk about, but there's that stigma and that shame of like, oh, McDonald's, you worked at a McDonald's, and it's like, why?
They're quite good. I learned a lot working at a McDonald's, and I was
Job's a
quite good.
job.
I got crew member of the week a couple
There you
times.
go.
So.
And I worked at a Starbucks for all of about 3 months before they politely asked me to quit so they didn't have to fire me.
So
I look, I'm not cut out for the what's it called? The quick service industry. They don't call it fast food, right? It's quick service. It's not, that's not the life. Oh, I mean, like, I had graduated from the concession stand at the beach to Starbucks, so it's like I thought I could handle it.
Like the big
But
peach one? Or
no, same guy owns the peach that owns the one down the way,
Gotcha.
like in the middle of
That's now a burger
Lakeside.
shack.
Sorry?
Actually, that's now a burger shack. I think
Sure.
that concession turned into a burger shack. It's pretty good. Plug for Penticton. Woo!
Yeah, but when I was there, it was, hey, everything was just, we were just throwing frozen pucks on the grill. Like, it was not quality food. But I got to eat it for free. To this day, I'm not 100% sure if we were actually allowed to just eat whatever we wanted, but we did.
You know what's the best thing? This is like a little like behind the scenes of McDonald's that I remember is that when we were working the night shifts, so much fun, by the way, when it was open 24 hours and we would do drive through. You scrunch up the like reg buns, like the cheeseburger buns, you put them into a ball and deep fry them and then put sugar on them and they're like donuts. It's pretty great. We would just like make ourselves donuts out of like reg buns. So, you know, not available on the menu.
That's amazing. That's amazing. You're using like the sugar for the coffee.
Probably, yeah.
Like a sugar packet, right? Like
sugar packet, just like sugar. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yep. But they were, I mean, you know, it was subpar donuts. So
hey, the McDonald's hamburger buns are a delicacy. Like that's what it's. You're not eating the hamburger. Like nobody cares about the meat in in a McDonald's hamburger. Nobody's like, oh my god, what a beautiful piece of beef. In a McDonald's hamburger, you're there for a couple of things. For me, it's the barbecue sauce first and foremost.
Interesting. Okay.
The bun, the hamburger buns, and then the French fries. That's why you're at McDonald's.
You want to know the like weird, like, I guess it's irony. Maybe it's irony. Is that like I didn't eat meat while I worked there. Like I ate chicken, so I would eat their chicken stuff, but I didn't. I mean, because I haven't eaten beef since the 4th grade. So
yeah, I know that you will disagree because you will say what you always say, which is that you just don't like the way it tastes, but you're really missing out. You're really missing out because when you're in the 4th grade, so you're what? You're how old are you in the 4th grade? 9?
I can't do that kind of math. I think so. 10.
Yeah.
5. It's -5, right? It's your age -5.
Sure.
Because so if you're in the 4th grade plus 5, sorry, 9. Yeah, you're 9. You're
9,
right.
yeah.
You did it. Good job.
When you're 9, you really don't appreciate a nice piece of beef, like a steak, like you're not gonna find a lot of 9-year-olds who can really
appreciate a steak.
Yeah, appreciate like a piece, like a nice piece of like filet mignon or something, right? Like
It's fair.
It's no different. Like they would rather have a hamburger, which like that's fine, but it does take a little while. You have to refine your palate a little bit and grow and mature as a person before you can enjoy a rare steak.
I would appreciate a steak, but it's the only kind of meat that I feel like that I would ever be missing out on. And the thing is that I've discovered tuna steaks and they're freaking delicious. Like ahi tuna with like a little bit. Oh,
yeah.
So.
But like, here's the thing. Okay. You don't eat bacon. And I just like
turkey bacon. Turkey bacon's good.
That is not the same thing.
I don't think I'm missing out on bacon.
Uh, you're
Like,
you're wrong. You're wrong because like bacon is not just one thing. Because we get into all the different kinds of delicious pork that are all very like within the bacon family.
I would never. No, I'm not. I don't miss pork at all. Pork is
Oh
not a
my
thing.
god.
I'm like, pork.
A nice pork belly. Oh my god. Oh boy, so delicious. Crackling. Oh my god. Like you've never had like this is what I'm saying is that like you made that decision at at such a young age. We could relate this to a whole bunch of other things
Say,
that like you were too young to make that call.
And yet, as I have grown and matured,
yeah,
I'm still quite fine with my choice.
because let me tell you, a nice porchetta sandwich with there's a place downtown called Meat and Bread that does it. They do a porchetta, which a porchetta is like it's kind of like a roll. It's like a pork roll. Like take the pork, roll it up, all sorts of seasoning and whatever, and they put a little salsa verde on that, and then a generous sprinkling of crackling, which crackling is the skin. It's like the skin fat sort of part of the porchetta. Like it crisps up to the point where it's just like
a content warning for vegans before.
Yeah, well, whatever. It's basically like pork rinds. Like that's kind of what it becomes, but it's not like a processed food.
Who would have thought you'd come to the Thunderquack podcast for like, what is that? Oh, what is the name of the thing with the sounds?
ASMR,
but like descriptions of the food that you would eat.
The funny thing is that it's 10:19 at night. Like, I don't know. I'm not particularly hungry, but now that we're talking about this, it's like, man. So like the thing about crackling is that it's almost like chips. It's almost like potato chips, but it's
pork.
It's part of the pork.
Right.
And it's just, oh my god, it's so crispy and crunchy. It's crispity crunchy, just like a peanut buttery Butterfinger. Yeah, and just on that sandwich, oh my god. Now I want to go to Meat and Bread. It's been a long time since I had a sandwich from Meat and Bread. When I work downtown, my god, dude, the food in downtown Vancouver is just like,
yes, I remember.
I miss it.
The days of the before.
The before times, yeah. In the before times when we could go outsides. We're almost there. We're almost into the after times. We are still like, hey, everybody, we're still in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. Like, don't go licking bus handles just yet. Like,
or ever. Maybe.
I mean, whatever. I'm not going to yuck anybody's yum, but it's not what I'm here for, you know. But I safety is my concern. Safety is my concern. And we're not quite there yet.
Thing that you've ever said before?
What?
I'm not going to
yuck somebody's yum. I've literally said it on this podcast on multiple occasions.
Okay.
And every time you laugh at it as if it's the first time you've ever heard it. So, I mean, like, don't stop because it's nice validation, but...
Isn't that, like, the nice thing about having a forgetful friend is that you can tell them the same thing over and over again and they'll always think you're hilarious.
Yeah, I don't know if it balances out in all of the frustration that it causes, but...
It should validate you in ways that are meaningful. I was learning about, I'm sorry, everybody. We have topics. We'll talk about them. But I was in and I mean, that's only half true. But I was in a diversity and inclusion training today, and we had to learn about empathy. And I just had like a real hard time. And then they were like, empathy is a skill. And I was like, oh, nope. I didn't realize it was like something that you could learn. I just like had always like written it off as I'm like, well, I'm not very empathetic, so guess I don't have to try. And now I feel bad because apparently I should be trying to be more empathetic as a person.
I've never expressed that to you, but having you saying you opened the door.
I did.
You opened the door to it, but that is a topic of conversation in the Cohen household about Amanda.
That I don't have empathy?
That you are not the most empathetic person at times. I don't think that you don't have empathy. I think that you have empathy blockers.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
I mean, it does, but I'd let you just go describe it further so that I can understand this today.
Here's the best illustration that I can give, and this is something that we've talked about previously, so I know I won't like hurt your feelings. This won't be like really news to you, but just like you can now frame this with this fact. There are a million things that you do for your film productions and for your other friends that would be super useful to the podcast that we do on now a bi-weekly basis. That you don't do. and like that is like there's like an empathy blocker there, and we have conversations and you go like, you will say to me like, I'm so glad that you handle everything, and then I'll make a comment like, yeah, well, I wish I didn't have to, and then you'll go like, yep, I'm so glad you handle everything, and it's like a cartoon, like a Simpsons moment of like Homer Simpson being like, and everything worked out just fine, and then Lisa will be like, the house is still on fire, and he's like, just fine. And then the episode will end, all right, because we'll move on to the next thing.
We'll come back fine.
but you absolutely, it's like it is the catch-22 of being such good friends with you, and we've talked about this before as well, is that like the people that you are casual acquaintances with, that I stumbled over that a little bit, but I think everybody understood what I said.
Yeah.
The people that you are a casual acquaintance with, you will bend over backwards for, because like you've got something to prove with that person. But speaking for myself in our relationship as friends, as one of my oldest friends, and I think like vice versa for us, right?
Yeah.
You don't really do anything for me. You don't really bend over backwards in any respects. I mean, like you took Kara for an overnight this past week. She had a nice little sleepover at your house, which had a knock-on benefit to me of not having to deal with her for around about 12 hours. Right.
It was selfish on my part because I wanted to hang out with her too.
But that's the thing, is that it ultimately was about you, because you wanted to hang out with Kara.
I want to have a good relationship with Kara because I like her and she's cool.
Yeah.
I would like to be a cool aunt.
And I think that like all of the benefits, and this is not why you're friends with people. You're not friends with people for it's not a, unless it's Andy, in which case he's actively giving you money sometimes. No, but that's a joke, Andy. It's a joke. We love you. I like what was I saying? I totally lost my train of thought. The benefits are not why you are friends with someone, but yeah, like they're in our transactional relationship, if you want to be objective about it, it is very like anything that is a perceived benefit of our friendship is purely coincidental to everything else that we do. All of the other activities, like podcasting and hanging out, whatever. It's like the other than just like the pleasure of your company, any other benefits on top of that are purely by accident. Which I'm fine with. I mean, like if I had a problem with it, I probably would have stopped being friends with you a long time ago. But
hope so.
It's funny because I'll get Facebook notifications on quite a regular basis, especially from about April until the beginning of June, from before Facebook had a messenger, and when you would write things on another person's wall in order to communicate back and forth. And it's not threaded. Like there's no connection, even though like you were replying to
something. Yeah.
I posted something on your wall. And then you posted you hit reply or what. I don't remember how Facebook worked back then, but like there was a way of like you were replying and it was posting to my wall. So I'm only seeing half of the conversation. So some of the times I don't know who instigated whatever. But I think like there are times where I'll be like, hey, did you want to hang out this weekend? And your response back would be like, you TiVo'd Smallville, right? And it was just like very, again, like if we're being objective and just looking at it as a transactional relationship, it's like I think and this is, we're retreading a lot of ground right now, but one of the main reasons why we remained friends after high school is because you didn't have a way of recording episodes of Smallville, and then watching them at a later time. And I was just convenient in that. I'm not super convenient because you had to come all the way from UBC, but you know, like it was
without a car.
without a car. Yeah,
That was
man. Oh boy.
the way back times. Yeah.
Yeah. I I'm
This is
so
so
happy to not be young and poor.
I know. I know.
I wish I had the body of my 20-year-old self, but everything else, it's like, this is the price that you pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. But yeah, definitely like so I will regularly get in my like what do they call, I don't remember, but you're like, hey,
You're
remember
like
when somebody did this?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like constantly just like messages, like half of a conversation with you of like, yeah, so I was thinking that I would come out to Metrotown and do some shopping, and like if you're around or whatever, and like if you haven't watched Smallville yet, then like we could totally watch Smallville.
Yeah.
And I know that my response to all that all the time was, I've absolutely already watched Smallville. Like I watched it that night, but you can come over and watch it if you want. Like I haven't deleted it because I know that you want to watch it.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. So this is, I mean, this is good. Let's talk about my lack of empathy for a little bit, because this
Yeah.
was part of what I did on the call, is I'm having to be like, what is that? And for me, it's because I absolutely get my back up if people try to come to me with an emotional plea. Like if somebody just comes to me and they like want to talk, or like they do, I'm always like, what is it that you actually want from me? Because I don't do that. Like I think that it's better to just go and talk to people for the things that you actually need from them.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think, and I have a friend that's like this, and I will say, like, he's really good about it. He's very, very busy all the time. And so he makes an effort that when he needs something from people, he also like makes a time to catch up. But I see him regularly enough that I'm like, you can just call me and like ask me for stuff. But the other day, and like every now and then he'll text me and we'll go like walk, like, because he lives really close, and so we'll hang out with his dog or whatever. But like recently he called me and he started the conversation by talking to me about random stuff, and I was like, what do you want, man? Like, I know that you didn't just call to talk to me. Like, I know that you want something. I'd rather you just, because it's like I don't have that same impulse. And he's like, no, I mean, yes, I have something I need from you, but also I kind of just want to catch up. And I'm like, oh, I see. I just don't have that same impulse. And
I have that argument with Crystal regularly, where she will call me in the middle of the day, and I'll be in the middle of doing something, whether I'm doing the dishes, making lunch, or actually working like I should be. And it'll be like, she'll be like, how's your day? And I'll be like, what do you need? Because I'm in the middle of stuff.
Yeah.
And like, this is the thing, this is the nature of Crystal's job, is that she works in people's homes, right? So she travels between people's homes during the day to her different clients for different appointments. So she has these whole like, I got half an hour right now because I'm driving from one house in one city to a house in another city. And so for her, it's like, well, I don't have anything else to do. So I'm going to call Mike and see how his day is going. And for me, it's like, I'm at my desk and I'm like head down, focused on something, which is hard enough for me to get into. And then my phone will ring and it's like, is it a problem?
Or
no, I just wanted to talk. And it's like, oh,
okay.
So we will have that conversation on a regular basis of like, why are you calling me? What do you need? What are you actually, what is the real purpose of this? Until I realized that like the real purpose of it was just that like she's just got time to kill. So
that's fair. I'm now like, I'm really like thinking about this because the thing is that the like friendship I have with you is the same as the type of friendships I have with everybody else. I don't meet up with people to not do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like I always have a purpose for it. And so it's always something where I'm kind of like, that was the foundation of our friendship, was that we watched Smallville or Star Wars or whatever it was that we did. And I've got like other friends where like the foundation of our friendship was that when we meet up, we like made projects or drank wine or whatever it was. It was always like something. So now I'm kind of like, I wonder if that's just like how I've mandated all of my friendships, or mandated, or like curated or something. Anyways, I'm going to try to work on my empathy. It would be great if people wanted to point it out to me, but people don't have to do that work. I can do the work on my own. But you know, it's something that I'm trying to become conscious of, but that I don't. Yeah. I guess too for me, because I feel like there's a genuineness there, because for me, I think that it would be really disingenuous for somebody to just spend time with me because they felt like it was like what you do with like in friendships, right? And for
Mm-hmm.
me, I'm always like, I want to hang out with people because I want to do that. Like there's something about it that I want to. It's not like obligatory to me in any way, right? Where I'm like, I have to see certain people like on these days so that it can feel like we're like fulfilling our friendship like quota or whatever it is. I just genuinely like, I don't have to talk to you for months on end, and then we can just hang out and do whatever. I will say that I probably have lost some friends like that. Definitely I can think of one of my recent acquaintance who I just like stopped reaching out to, and then like a couple months later I was like, oh yeah, I haven't talked to so and so in so long, and people are like, yeah, she's mad at you, and I'm like, oh. Like didn't even recognize because I didn't like. Anyways,
Yeah, my thing with that is that it goes both ways, right? Like every telephone has both a microphone and a receiver, right? Like, but some people will act like, oh, you didn't call me, you didn't contact me, or whatever. No, the friendships that are most important to me and the ones that I value the most are the ones that I can not talk to the person for 3 weeks and send them a funny meme, and they'll be like, that's rad, and that's it, and then I won't talk to them for another 3 weeks, and then they'll send me a funny meme and I'll be like, awesome.
yeah,
And then for some reason we'll be in the same place at the same time, and it's not like we haven't talked to each other in forever, right? Like we haven't had like a meaningful conversation in a year, but it doesn't matter, right?
yeah,
Bill, who was my best man when I got married, it's like Bill and I never talk. Like we never talk. I'll usually message him on his birthday, and he'll message me on my birthday, and maybe like Christmas or something like that. I'll shoot him a quick Merry Christmas or a Happy New Year or something like that. And other than that, it's like, I don't know, if something specific to our friendship happens. Like when I started watching Ranma again a few months back, we talked a lot in that period when I was watching it, because he's the one who introduced me to it. So it's like we talked there, and it's like that friendship is more important to me than most of my friendships, because it doesn't matter that he lives in Penticton and I live here, and we see each other every 4 or 5 years now. And we talk like 3 times a year, because when we talk, it's like nothing has changed. Right? Like the relationship is still the same that it was before. And it's like, I don't know, like I value those friendships more than like the ones like a needy house plant that, like, if you forget to water them for a day, the next time you look at them, they're all shriveled up and angry at you. Because to me, like that's where like what I say about like that transactional relationship, like that's where it's actually important. Like the transactional part of our relationship is not important, and it can be a source of frustration, but usually like the reality of that, and what I always end up when I do get frustrated or whatever, and it's like, and then I talk it out with Crystal or whoever, it's always like, well, that's not really what I'm upset about. Like Amanda just showing up for the podcast and then bouncing isn't what I'm actually upset about. What I'm upset about is that I'm tired right now. I have too many things on my plate, and I wish that somebody would take one of these things away from me. But I chose to do all of these things. It's not somebody else's responsibility to do that. Like, you and I have an agreement with the podcast, essentially, like a spoken, unspoken agreement of like, this is what the workload is. Like, this is how it works.
And I will say, here's the thing, Mike.
Yeah.
In our personality tests the other day, I have no creative control over the podcast.
Yeah.
And if you want me to have more creative control over the podcast, I'm happy to take on some work. But there's certain things that I come here because I like you. Right? Mm-hmm. And I'm invested in you. Podcasting is something that like I think is very important to you, and that's like a core tenet of our friendship. It was so that we could hang out more and talk to each other, right? Like I did the podcast because I was already coming to your house every week to watch a television series. It made sense to do that and then talk about it to just have more fun time. But like podcasting is not like what drives me. But if there ever was a time where you're like, you know what, I just can't deal with this. As your friend, I would do it. But as somebody who like, again, podcasting, I do because of you.
Yeah.
Right. So like there's always that too for stuff, is that I hope at least, and this is something that I've never, let's air out all of our stuff on the podcast, but I've never actually come to you and like asked if there was like a weight that I could take off your shoulders, because in my brain, I do this too. I do my film projects and complain about them till the cows come home, but I'm not going to give up my creative control as a producer to have somebody help me with it, because that's what I love. And then I'll just complain about having to do all the work that goes with it, because I don't want to. I want to just complain about it. I don't want somebody to actually take away the thing that I love, right? I just want people to sympathize with where I'm coming from in my all the things that I'm dealing with in that moment. So I hope that you know that if there were things that you wanted me to
this is the thing. I know you well enough to know that the things that I don't want to do, you definitely don't want to do.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course.
Like as much as I don't want to, you don't want to twice as much. Yeah. So I would never be like, I hate posting and doing the social media stuff every week. But like, and I know like recently you've commented a few times of like me coming up with the title the next day. Great. Like you don't know what the title is going to be.
Yeah.
And I know like, again, because I know you so well, I know that is you expressing thank you for doing it.
Yeah.
Like well, you're doing a good job. Thank you for doing it. So to me, it's like that, like, again, like that's validation, right? It's like, yeah, okay, cool. Good.
Yeah. I see you, Mike.
Yeah. But if there were somebody else to like, I would love it if we had somebody to run social media for all of Thunderquack, like to do the stuff that a social media account is supposed to do on a daily basis, and not just the mechanical, because I know that like we're not doing ourselves any favors by just posting the content, right? Like that's the stick, and like we have no carrot on any of our social media stuff, which means that like nobody's like, there are a few people following us that interact with us, but one of the reasons why we have low engagement on our social stuff is because we offer no carrot for following us on social. It's not the product, right? The product is the podcast. And if you listen to the podcast, then you're probably already subscribed. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe, leave a comment, review it on iTunes.
You get this lovely content of, meat dissection and podcast behind the scenes.
Yeah. But yeah, so I would love it if there was somebody to do that sort of thing, but like, I can't pay anybody to do it, which means that it would have to be somebody who wants to do it for the passion of it. And it can't just be a random person off of the street, right? Because there's that's a lot of trust to hand over our social media accounts to another person, because like you could really screw us over very quickly by posting the wrong thing and pissing off the audience, because that like then like ultimately I would be responsible for that decision, because I hired or allowed a person to do a thing, right? So it's like It's one of those things where it's like there are things that I wish that somebody else would do, but I know that it would be more of a headache to have somebody do it than to just do it myself. So I do the half-ass version on my own, um, rather than it being great. But like, I don't know. There's a component that certainly, like, the majority of people in the Thunderquack sphere are in it now, like people who do a podcast or help out with stuff. It's like they started as part of the community or as a close friend, right? Like Curtis and I became friends, and then eventually we started doing a podcast together. And then after enough time doing a podcast together, he wanted to do his own podcast, and it's like, yeah, absolutely, it's part of Thunderquack. Like you're part of this, and he's one of my best friends, and I trust him as much as I would trust anybody else. So right. like he can have the keys to whatever and do whatever, because I trust that he's gonna make good decisions. Maybe not always the decision that I would make, right? But they won't be damaging decisions for the most part. Like he won't make damaging decisions any more than I would. I guess is the way to phrase that. Because like it's not like I'm perfect. I make mistakes too. But like and Tim and Kyle doing the Saga Continues, and them bringing Paul onto that podcast first as like just sort of like a regular recurring guest, and then eventually as just like a regular part of the podcast. And it's like, I really don't know Paul that well, but I know Tim and Kyle well enough that I trust them and their judgment, that like Paul's not, gonna go off on some racist rant on Twitter, and screw us over, right? Like which Paul never would, because Paul's a good guy. But like, I don't know, like so there are people within Thunderquack that I trust to do that, but nobody within Thunderquack wants to do the stuff that has to be done that only I do. Like all the administrative stuff, all of the stuff that keeps the well-oiled machine running. That if I stopped doing next week or next month, all of a sudden a bunch of people would be like, "Hey, how come my thing's not working anymore?" It's like, because I stopped paying for it. Because I decided that I didn't want to anymore, and so now we just don't have that anymore. So yeah, like there's a bunch of stuff like that, but it's just, I don't know, it's just, it is what it is. Yeah. These are the trials and tribulations of running a podcast network. This actually, like, it brings us into one of the topics that I wanted to talk about, which is that, like, it's June. This is our first proper episode of Thunderquack in June, right? Yeah, it's only the 7th. It's Pride Month. And
everywhere except for Vancouver.
Except for Vancouver, which waits until August, right? We do ours in August for some reason, but whatever.
There's an actual reason. I forget what it is, but
June 1st hits, and the two things happen. First, it's actually funny because I find that first it's all of the memes about all of the corporations switching their logos over to rainbow versions of their logos. And I talked about this on Rebel Cells last week, and I knew that I would end up talking about it on this week. And I feel like I kind of rambled a little bit on Rebel Cells. I don't know if I made my points the best that I could, but we don't participate in that part of Pride. In that, like, and it would be very easy for me to just do like a rainbow logo for Rebel Cells and a rainbow logo for Thunderquack and whatever. It's not it's like, oh, I don't want to do the work. It would take me all of like half an hour, 45 minutes to do everything that needs to be done. But to me, it's like when you use the word performative, changing your logo over to a rainbow logo is the least impactful, most performative thing that I think that you can do during Pride. And it's not like to me it's almost like white noise at this point, right? And then like all the memes come, and it's like, oh, here's all the corporations doing the like supporting Pride during June, and changing their logo and making a one-time donation once a year, um, and then turning around and like, let's use Disney as a really great example, not really supporting the community the rest of the year, and certainly making decisions from a corporate perspective that are actually, they're actually kind of anti that ideology. um Things like, I don't know, in that last Star Wars movie that they released, um it's like, on the one hand they're like, hey, there's an on-screen a gay couple in a Star Wars movie for the first time, you
Oh,
guys.
right, yeah. Yeah.
And everybody's excited of like, oh cool, I like, they're being vague, maybe it's because they want to save a surprise for us, maybe it's maybe it's Finn and Poe.
Yeah.
It's not Finn and Poe. It's two characters that only have names if you pick up the visual dictionary and read that. And they kiss, and it's all of maybe 2 seconds. It's at the end of the movie when everybody's, all of the resistance people are celebrating, and it's just two women, they kiss. It's very innocuous in terms of like it would, is this offensive? No, of course not. It shouldn't be. Like, there are people who will be offended by it, but those people are dumb. And I have no problem saying that, because it's a very dumb thing to be offended about. So it shouldn't be offensive. It shouldn't be a problem. Um, so yeah, put it in your movie. Cool. It's in the movie. It's not meaningful, I don't think. That's sort of my hearsay, anecdotal evidence from interacting with people on Twitter, is that I don't think that that's impactful.
If you can lift it out of the story without it changing anything about the story, it doesn't have a significant
and that's the whole thing. So this is where, like, Disney saying that they support Pride and that they support like all of their LGBTQ plus fans, viewers, whatever wording they want to use, as well as like their employees and stuff like that. Well, then maybe don't make a big deal about an on-screen gay couple in Star Wars that was engineered in a way that we could make sure that we pull that out for China, because China's not going to let us run that movie if that's in there. Like, either you're going to have the scruples and the ideals to stand behind a decision to have a gay character in an openly gay character in Star Wars, to the point that it is a part of the story. It's not that it needs to like dictate plot points, but that like it's not incidental, but that it is like, it's actually a part of that character. Like, it's actually an important part of that character that is maybe one of the things that, the language around this is tough, like, not defines them, because it's not like, hey, look, there's the token gay, but like in the sense of like, it's like you saying, it's not something that you could just like, you know, grab with tweezers and pull out without touching the sides, like it's Operation, right? Like because that's what they did. They put in a thing that they knew would be really easy to just remove. That's 2 seconds, so we'll just hold on this other shot for 2 seconds longer. Like, that's not, you're not actually standing by any sort of ideology with that. And it's tough, because it's like you're holding the creatives accountable for a corporate decision. And it's like, Loki's coming out this week, right? As you guys listen to this, it's tomorrow. So for us, it's in 2 days.
The gender fluid thing, right?
Yeah, and there's a screenshot going around where like he's got the TVA, which is this the people who pull him out of the time stream, basically. They have like a file on him, and in his, you see his file, and under his sex it says fluid, which is awesome, because that's totally true to the character of Loki, who for a certain period in the early 2010s, I think, was just female. And it's not that they like rebooted the character or retconned something. Loki just decided to be female for a while.
Right.
And because he's Loki and he's fluid, right? Like it's like we say he because generally the character is male. Yeah. But I guess they would probably be more accurate, right? But I yeah, like that character can shapeshift. That character is a shapeshifter, both in the literal sense that Loki can shapeshift, as well as in the like the trope thematic sense. Loki is a shapeshifter, right? Like Loki is the Raven in Pacific Northwest First Nations mythology, right? Like same character, even though they're totally different cultures. It's like there's one
but like
in
a trickster,
every
like a trickster
god,
basically.
right?
Yeah.
Who are often shapeshifters, like almost always shapeshifters, and use that shapeshifting ability in order to pull off their tricks. So like it's this, it is an integral part of the character. Thank God they're stuck with that. They've I wouldn't say that they've ignored it in the MCU up to this point, but it's definitely one of those things that is sort of like, I mean, like when you cast Hiddleston in the role, you're implying a certain, to use an early 2000s term, metrosexuality to the character of Loki. But but it's nice to see them kind of go all in on it. I mean, like, because it's to the point where some people have made like put together theories of like Darcy in the MCU, Kat Dennings' character, could be Loki.
What?
Right? Like that, that there's like that there's a possibility that's actually like, you know, like, and you have to do some mental gymnastics in order for that to work. But like, hey, the fact that he's been pulled out of the time stream and blah blah blah, it's like now anything's on the table. You could reveal that like actually Kat Dennings as Darcy is Loki from later in his life. And he's shapeshifted into this other person in order to like influence the outcome of the Thor story, right? Like you could definitely, if you think fourth dimensionally, you can work out that story. But
and don't we all think fourth dimensionally when we're here?
It's important to think fourth dimensionally every once in a while,
of course.
But yeah, like it's nice to see them moving in that direction, but at the same time, it's like, are they? Will we find out after it airs that in China they put male?
Oh yeah,
right? Because there are certain things that audience won't like, and there are also certain things that government doesn't allow. So like, and I'm speaking from a place of some ignorance, because like I don't really know like the cause. I only know the effect on this stuff. Like I only know stuff from like what's happened, of like we know that they removed, like they made that scene in Rise of Skywalker so that they could remove it for foreign markets, that where a woman kissing a woman on screen is illegal, right? So yeah, like and I don't know details on like which countries that is specifically, but we know that that's there, right? So like I don't know, are we gonna find out that corporate Disney is still pulling the strings on that stuff? So when Disney like changes their logo to a rainbow logo, like what does that mean?
So I
you know what I mean?
And I want to come at this too, because I'm intrigued by the whole conversation about the corporatization of stuff like Pride and of the Black Lives Matter movement and of things like this. And the part that I grapple with is that how can we maximize corporate greed for the better? And this is one of the conversations, like, again, it's so apt that we're having this. That I spent the whole day talking about diversity and inclusion, and we had these amazing speakers come into the show and or into talk to us. And I don't want to keep talking about stuff that doesn't, like, without acknowledging the trauma that has happened in or been like brought to light in British Columbia. I don't think we've podcasted since the discovery in residential schools in BC. Have we, Mike? I don't remember. Anyways, but like that there's this whole history of Canada that is not even history. It's like a living darkness that basically is permeating our culture right now in the discovery of 215 dead children basically buried in this mass grave outside of a residential school. And then just talking, like opening up the conversations about Canada's colonial history and how do we hold people accountable for things. And that at what point is it only if you're loud enough or if you care enough, and that these diversity and inclusion initiatives are now happening. Like I was at a corporate training for diversity and inclusion, and there's government funding for this kind of stuff because they're recognizing that you cannot continue to work in this world without starting to recognize that you have to make active decisions to become better global citizens, like even as a corporation, right? So at what point can we start demanding this of other countries, but that we know that at least Canada and the US and many European countries are at least trying, right? Trying to shift these needles. And that is in this because there's a demand for it. Like customers are saying that you need to be inclusive or I'm not going to buy things from you. Yeah. And luckily those voices are becoming louder than the voices that are saying the opposite. And while that continues to be the case, do we believe that human beings are good enough that we can continue to fight for things and continue to fight and say and recognize that we want this to happen? And I think that there is a movement right now being like, hey, put your money where your mouth is because we demand this of our corporate culture. Anyways, I know that those are disjointed things, but the reason I bring it up is because there's just so many conversations, like the conversations about pride and corporatization versus like the Indigenous reconciliation, like the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, or calls to action rather in Canada, and just what so much work that we actually still have to do, but that the first step of that is recognizing it. Like the first step, like there is a step where it's like if we could just get the Catholic Church to admit that they had a hand in this, that's at least one step forward. So how do we get these large organizations to start making decisions? Well, the first thing is for them to admit that there is something there, right? So posting a rainbow flag, it really is the least you could do. And then you can prove it, right? You then have the rest of your corporate existence to prove to us that you earn our dollars when you put that flag up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, it's like as the person who makes the decision for, not that we are a corporate entity, but in the spirit of that idea, it's like we're kind of more, but we're more of a cooperative than we are a corporation, right? Because it's like it's not like I make decisions. Like Ryan and Chloe, they do what they do. Right. Like I don't dictate anything to them. I check in with them like every 6 months and go like, hey, what's up? Right? Like I'll look at their numbers and go like, your downloads are looking really good, or hey, downloads could be better. Right? Like that's it. Right? Like I don't say to them like, oh, these numbers aren't where I want them to be, so you guys have to change the way that you do your content. It's like, how can I help? Right? Like that's kind of how we do Thunderquack. So as the person who's responsible for making decisions about stuff like that, like if Ryan and Chloe had come to me and said like, hey, we want a pride version of the logo, I would have been like, yeah, cool. Right. Like, but I wasn't going to mandate it to anybody. I wasn't going to like tell Tim and Kyle and Paul that they got to do it, or like push that in any way as like an agenda, because like because the creative control of the shows is up to the individuals that do the shows. So if they want to talk about it, they can talk about it. Like if we talk about it on Rebel Cells like we did last week, that's because I wanted to talk about it. We're talking about it here because I want to talk about it. But if like Saga Continues or Epic Marvel Podcast, which don't necessarily need to, right? They don't have to. And I don't want to mandate things like that. I also just don't want to I don't want, like I said, there's like, it's like white noise with the rainbow logos now, right? And I
I
made the
mean, we
joke
do
before
live
we
in a
started
very
recording.
little.
Our icon, our profile icons are rainbows anyways, because that's the color scheme. Like, it's not a full rainbow, right? It's not like it's the pride flag rainbow, but like it would be really,
Very
I
colorful.
would really have to think hard of like, how am I going to make this a rainbow? Because it's already 4 colors. But whatever. It, to me, it's just like, I think it's much more important that we, certainly as the Thunderquack podcast, remain focused on this conversation all the time, which I think that we do. Like, I mean, it doesn't dominate.
We always talk a little bit about politics or social justice whenever we're talking about anything. That's why people come talk to us or listen to
So
us.
it's I don't know, I'm always open for, like, if people think that there's something that we could be doing better, or more that we could be doing, then I'm down for that. I know that last year around this time with the BLM protests and stuff, I wanted to get a little bit more active of, like, sort of making regular contributions to charities and stuff like that. And that didn't really, I don't know, it was just really hard for me to figure out a way for that to be, for it not to just be me going like, okay, this month we're going to do this charity and this month we're going to do this charity. Like, I wanted it to be more of a community thing, and it never really coalesced, which is also on me. Cause again, as the person who's responsible for stuff, it's well, we've been talking about all, like, there's a lot on my plate already. Cause we're not even talking about the fact that I also have a 40-hour-a-week job and 2 kids. And occasionally I like to spend time with my wife. But yeah, that's a bit of an excuse for not doing this stuff, but at the same time, it's the reality. So there's stuff like that, like, I'd still like to be doing more of, but like, with that money that we get from Patreon. But then I'm also sensitive to the fact that, like, that's not necessarily why people are giving us money on Patreon. Like, if people want to go donate to charities and we talk about charities and stuff like that, they can go do that and they can make that choice, as opposed to them, like, giving us money to support the podcast and then me going, cool, I'm going to take a portion of that and do this. Right. Because we don't all have to agree. We don't have to be a homogenous group of just like an echo chamber of all group thinking the same thing. Like, I like some people are going to have different opinions on certain things, and I do want to be sensitive of that. That always comes down to, you can have your opinion as long as your opinion doesn't infringe on the rights of another human being. And isn't actively causing harm to another human being. But, like, if you, like, here's a great example. Abortion is always the best example for this, because, and I think I've said this before on the podcast, if you yourself as a person are pro-life, that's your choice. That's your decision, right? That you would never get an abortion or be a part of that. That's your choice, and I support everybody's choice to make that decision. Where the line is when you start dictating that for other people and you take the choice away from them because of a moral ideology that you hold that is, from my perspective, completely subjective, right? Based on the interpretation of 2,000-year-old text that never actually talks about that subject. At least not explicitly, right? So that's that's kind of the distinction that I make, and that's where I go, like, I not that I would ever necessarily think to, like, put money towards something like that, but we would, like, say, like the women's march or something like that. That's something that we would support, right? Like, we would support charities associated with that, and women's reproductive rights is definitely a part of that. And like, I don't know, but now I'm rambling again, like I did on Rebel Cells, because this is difficult stuff.
Complicated stuff to get through.
But but I want us. I want Thunderquack to be actively participating in the conversation and a part of it. And we've talked about this before. It's like you and I are both heterosexual, cisgendered white people. But we are surrounded by queer people in our lives. And so it's one of those things where it's like, is pride specifically important to me? And does it affect my life on a day-to-day basis? Like for the singular human entity that is Michael Cohen? No. But does it affect me in the way that like people that I love and care about are affected by it? Yes. So it's important to me. So it's a thing that first and foremost, pride is a protest and then a celebration, right? Like, and thinking about stuff like that. And it's like, just to me, it's like, there's all of this stuff in the air. And I would rather the logo that we put on Instagram, the post that we make on Facebook or Twitter is not nearly as important to me. And this is what I said on Rebel Cells. I'm pretty sure I said this. It's like, that's not the product. Just like I was talking about, like with the social media stuff, like that's not the product. This is the product. The podcast is what we produce. And so for us to have the conversation here and now in the podcast is so much more important to me than any rainbow logo that we would post. Because this is the primary way that people interact with Thunderquack, right? And this is the way that we can have the most impact. And like I said, like this is ongoing. I don't want this to be just like Black Lives Matter, which I don't think that could we have done more? Probably yes, definitely, absolutely, certainly. But did that conversation ever go away? No, it's a year later, and you and I have talked about it. Like it comes up in conversation on the podcast once a month.
At least, yeah.
Like it is present. It is part of our ongoing conversation when we talk about social justice. And that sort of, to me, it's like, that to me is much more important, that we don't just like take the month. It's like Black History Month. It's always the jokes that'll get made on social media of like white history gets the rest of the year, Black people get 1 month, right? And it's like, well, like let's change that. Let's not make that, we can still celebrate in February and like have Black History Month, but let's do better the rest of the year to talk about these things and include Black culture in our conversations about culture, right? And include LGBTQ plus in our conversations about social justice all the time, and not just in June because it's time to get out the rainbow flags and celebrate and whatever, right? Like so I don't know, and I think like there are other conversations about pride that we can have about the specific celebration that is pride, that is usually signified by a parade. But to me it's just like, I don't know, I wanted to talk about it because it's this thing that like people talk about it on that surface level of like, oh, all of these corporations, and it's like, but exactly to one of the points that I think you made earlier, Amanda, there are companies that are doing good work, and they're doing that good work because people were loud about it, and because we yelled and said, hey, this is important, and we expect some sort of accountability from corporations to the people that work for those corporations and the people that are affected by those corporations. So like at the same time that I want to say to Disney, like, hey, you've been doing really great with inclusivity and representation and having more than just white characters in your stories, and that sort of thing. It's like that. At the same time, now's a really good time to remind them of the things that they're falling short on, that we're still not there with, because there's still a lot of work to do. So yeah, I don't know. That's, to me, that's kind of the conversation. And so I don't want to contribute, because I do think that it would contribute to, and I also don't want to be seen as contributing to, because I feel like then it might detract from some of the other stuff that we want to do that's more important, some of the other conversations that we want to have, to that, like, uh uh the rainbow washing, right? Like that, the rainbow washing effect that we see now every June. Because you see, like, all these companies that, like, I saw a really good example of it. There's a lot of companies in gaming and video games that they operate all over the world, and they change their logo in the regions that are okay with them changing their logo. And the ones that are not okay with it, they just leave their logo alone. Like, it's fine. We'll just leave it alone. And like, the world is very small. And to me, it just goes back to what I was saying about Disney, of like, if you're gonna take a stand, if you're gonna make a statement, and like I said, pride is a protest. That's where its roots are. So if you're participating in pride, then you're participating in the protest that is pride. No different than Black Lives Matter, no different than the Women's March, or like, these other things. Man, I really wish that there was something catchier for the Stop AAPI hate, because it's
Right.
so
Yeah.
it's clunky. It just, that needed a little bit more marketing. So nobody got a hold of that, like Black Lives Matter, right? Like, where it's like that. Black Lives Matter is so easy. It's so quick to just say, right? But anyways, that's just me putting on my marketing hat for a second. But yeah, like if you're going to make a stand with these things, you're going to participate in these protests, then you're going to, and like, you can't just dip your toe into the water with it. So to me, I feel like this is us being whole hog, because, like, this is where it matters. If somebody that's a listener is offended by this conversation and by our support of I don't want to even, like we can be specific and say LGBTQ plus rights, but I just say human rights. I If somebody has a problem with that, like, they're gonna turn the podcast off, and maybe we lost a listener. I don't mourn that lost listener. But that's exactly my point, is that's the stance that you and I take with this podcast and with everything that we put into Thunderquack. Like, I want this to be a safe place where everybody is welcome and everybody is included. And that means that it's the um it's the that comic of, like, the do you have to tolerate a Nazi, and it's like, no, you don't. Right? Like, you have to be accepting, and you have to be tolerant of like, do you have to be tolerant of intolerance? And it's like, no, you don't. Actually, you can tell those people that they're not welcome, and you're still being tolerant. But
I
yeah,
think
go ahead.
for the last little bit of this, I do want to specifically talk about just some of the issues. I know that people are from America, but Canada is in a crisis right now. And I think that one of the things is that we unfortunately get seen of as sort of this, like, polite, like, multicultural, like, great place to live. But there are, like, some major issues that are happening right now. And I think one of the, I mean, I talked about it a little bit, and I'll come back to the residential school conversation, but also I think one of the things that sort of prompted us wanting to talk about different issues today is the comment that Simu Liu made on Twitter and Facebook, I guess, just
Yeah.
about his treatment on Kim's Convenience, and Kim's Convenience being the show, again, I think it's a CBC show too, right? So that is based on a play by Ines Joy, who is a Canadian playwright, and was the only person of Asian descent, I think, on the writing team
Yeah.
for the show, and just how problematic that in it of itself is. And that these stories that, yes, it's created on his content, but then where does that diverge and put these individuals at risk? And that, I think like, a second cast member has come out, the one that plays the mom, Jun Young, I think. Yoon is her name, I think. And like basically said, yes, this is correct. Like what he's saying happened, and we like there is treatment that was very obvious, and there are storylines that were racist, and we had to deal with this. And we, being the character, like the people involved in the series that were Asian, felt like we needed to say something because the stories that were being written for us by these white voices were not representative of what we thought that the series should be.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the AAPI, like Asian hate conversation, I mean, Asian American is a different experience than Asian Canadian. Just with our history specifically in the Pacific Rim, I think about of like the diversity of voices in Canada, and that there's this whole different relationship. I mean, I know that Japanese internment camps happened in America as well, but I mean, there is such a deep-rooted history of discrimination and racism, and Japanese internment camps, and then the residential school history in Indigenous communities that have just permeated full cultural conversations. And when we look at residential schools, really those happening up until the last one closed in like 1996, which is not history. That's not history. That's lived experience.
Yeah.
And so there's these deep traumas that exist in Canada that we just don't talk about. And then when we create media that we're like, look at this great representative media, and even that is false, that there's this sort of, we need to look critically at the stories that we tell and the voices that we support. And I will say, I think that Canada recognized it. I think they're trying to be better. But at the end of the day, looping it back to Pride, if big corporations don't stand up and say, you know what, if you want Disney to air its big films in China, you better take it with all of the content that we create. Until there's somebody that's standing up, that's putting their dollars where the conversation is, I mean, it really, it doesn't mean as much as it could. And so we can only do so much as individuals and as consumers, but the thing that we can do is stand up for the things that we think are important, even if it's just amplifying those voices. I will say, take a look at what land you live on. If you're in North America, there are people that have been stewards of this land since time immemorial, and the colonial history of Canada and the US displaced and, you know, resulted in the genocide of many populations. And the least we can do is recognize and honor that, right? And I think I don't know if we ever talk about it, but I think you're in the same, you might be in a different territory actually, but like I'm specifically on the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, and I just know that I've learned that, and that's something that I have in my arsenal, so that I at least can speak of the space that I inhabit with some sense of knowledge. But it took time to recognize that and to pronounce it correctly, and to know that there is a history here that I need to be paying attention to. You can go to native-land.ca, and it actually shows a map of the whole world where you can go through and you can see all of the different territories. And like, of course, North America is just completely packed with different things, but we also look at places like Australia and New Zealand, where there are these like really strong Indigenous communities. Anyways, it's just worth it. Do a little bit of work on yourself. Yeah. We're not just going to sit in our corner of the internet and rant at stuff and like the pride flags, but maybe there's some work that can be done in organizations that we can contribute to. And there's a lot of work that we do owe to the Indigenous community, specifically the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action that exist. They exist because of the class action settlement that happened through residential school survivors, who Canada acknowledged and recognized and said, yes, what happened to you was unacceptable. We're going to not only monetarily compensate you, but we will take further action. And so we owe a lot of the conversations that are happening in Canada around truth and reconciliation directly to these survivors, who not only wanted to help them, like, you know, help themselves deal with this trauma and you know, and be obviously recognized for that, but that they wanted to make it help others too, right? Like how do you heal, or how do you move forward? Like how do you even start a conversation once you get the government to admit that it committed atrocities against you and your family? How do you continue to live on that land and work every day and, you know, be a part of that community? So there's work to be done, and the Black Lives Matter movement, I think, was very good about recognizing Indigenous voices, specifically in Vancouver. I know that the Juneteenth protests and things like that were very good about standing in solidarity with the First Nations populations.
Yeah, I think that's I mean, in the way that we've been talking about it, that sort of, you know, like pride is one of many of these conversations, but they're all intrinsically linked, because at the end of the day, all of these conversations are about the same thing, which is that these groups, marginalized groups, at-risk groups, want the same thing they white cisgendered heterosexual men mostly benefit from. Right. And when we talk about privilege, it's easy to get into the thinking of privilege as like I saw this today, it's like, it's not bonuses or like how was it worded? It was like, there was another thing as well, but like you guys understand what I mean. Like bonuses and perks, I think, is what it was. It's about the obstacles and barriers that you don't encounter. That's what privilege is, right?
Yeah.
And so it's much harder to see, and it is more insidious in that way, in that, like, it's really hard to acknowledge the things that didn't affect you. Right? It's really easy to see the things that they were a benefit, but or I mean, like, for like, and I think that this is where a lot of white people have a hard time with the white privilege thing, is that they go like, oh well, my life was hard too, I didn't get X job that I wanted, and I didn't blah blah blah. And it's like, yes, but the fact that you were white isn't the reason why. And like,
There's class struggle as well.
yeah,
That's a real
yeah,
thing.
exactly.
There are economic barriers that impact people differently, but when your race does not become part of that conversation, or if the systemic economic barriers that have existed are not one of the economic barriers that you encounter.
Like, I currently sit in a house that I own. I mean, it's a townhouse, but it's a part of a strata that I own, that Crystal and I worked very hard to accomplish, and didn't really have any help. It's not like we had generational wealth to help us out or anything like that. But that doesn't change the fact that I was able to get to where I'm at in my life because I'm white, and because I've, you know, when my name came across people's desks, they didn't think twice about it, because, you know, it's a foreign sounding name or an ethnic sounding name, right? And I've never been discriminated because I am married to Crystal. I discriminated against because I'm married to Crystal, right? Like, these these are things that people in marginalized groups, that they have to deal with. That like gay people in a lot of instances will still hide their sexuality and their like, they'll use the term partner or something like that, because, and now it's kind of funny because partner has now become like a thing. If somebody says partner, it's almost like a trigger of like, oh, that person's gay, right? But I think that language came out of I don't want to say, if I'm a guy, my boyfriend, because then everybody will know that I'm gay, so I'm just going to say partner, right?
I try to use partner for everybody.
Well, and that's some people do that. Some people do choose to do that. Just like I have my gender pronouns in my bio and all my social media stuff, right? To normalize it, right? but yeah, people still deal with this stuff. I think especially like on the internet, and especially in the circles that we're a part of, we like to think that we've evolved past it and we're above it. Um, but society as a whole is not. We're not there
Right.
yet, and there are still prejudices. And hey, I've been part of a hiring thing at the company that I'm with right now, and I have to do work myself to get past some of the prejudices that I have. Because when you are working in the tech space, there conversations kind of come up about like outsourcing and you know, there are programs where like you can hire somebody from another country and sponsor them to come to Canada. Well, it's a very popular thing to do in tech. Um, and I'll like I'm gonna be super vulnerable and really honest. When I heard that we were looking at that and exploring that, it upset me because I was like, well, why aren't we just hiring people who are here, right? And like it's like when it comes to people who are here, I'm not thinking in that way, but it was a weird thing where I had to like step back and go like, why do I care? What difference does it make? Like it's a like we're doing it not out of a sense of altruism, I don't think, but out of like a financial sort of like it's like this is a more financially motivated than it is, you know, like putting good out into
Always.
the world.
Always.
But because it's a company, right? But
Yeah.
I don't know, like I had this weird moment where like I had to recognize in myself why I was having that reaction and then step back and say like, is this actually like, because I was thinking in terms of like, well, hiring somebody from another country isn't as good as hiring a Canadian. And it's like, but if that person was already in Canada, even if they've only been here a year, would I have that same reaction? Right. And I was like, well, of course not. Like if somebody came in off the street with a resume, the same person, the identical person with the identical experience, but they were already in Canada, I would like would I have the same reaction? And I had to recognize in myself, no, I wouldn't. Right. And so like the reason that I bring that up and the reason why I leave myself open to the criticism of that is because like I want everybody to know that like even Amanda and I who think that we are very progressive people, it's like you're still gonna have moments because that's what's systemic, right? Like that's what that means. It's that like we've
It's forever there. It's always going to be a part of how you
yeah,
walk in the world and how you relate to it, and all you can do is check yourself and make better choices each time you go.
yeah,
It
yeah.
actually
So
really bums me out that we can't hire more people internationally because of CanCon laws.
hmm.
It's really brutal.
Well, and
There's
it's like
like in like
the
every
world is
city.
changing, right? So
Yeah. But
you
it's
know
like a good thing. I
that's
will
stuff.
say it's a good thing. I'm glad that there is an effort to create stories that are made by Canadians for Canadians, but it makes it really hard when we have to hire like 100
Yeah,
people to work on our shows that are
yeah.
all
I
Canadian.
to me it's balance, right? Like because that initial reaction that I had, I think, is a little bit of it can become a dangerous thing because nationalism can become a dangerous thing very easily, very
Oh
quickly.
yeah.
But there is also an importance to having like a a, a sense of pride about the community that you live in, right? Like because you want to have, like I said, it's a balance. It's a balance of pride and shame. Of like you want to be proud of the things that you do right and the good that you do for the world, but you want to be a little bit ashamed of the places where you fall short. Um, and so I think like thematically, that's what all of this conversation has been about. Like to me, like there, like the balance for us around pride is like it to me. It's much more important that we have this conversation and that we talk about this stuff on the podcast rather than the opposite, which would be to put up a
Performative.
pride
Yeah.
logo and not talk about it on the podcast, right? Like if we're going to do one or the other, which one of these is more important, and which one of these?
Why not both?
We could do both, but like I think I made my point of why I didn't really feel like contributing to that part of the conversation this year. And maybe next year I'll feel differently about it, right? But for this year, I was definitely like, I don't want to be another one of those, you know. So yeah, I don't know. Again, this is rambly. It's a little bit, but we talked.
Yeah, this podcast was all over the place, but
it's tough.
You know,
I mean, like you brought up the Simu Liu stuff, and there's definitely more that I would love to talk about on that, but we've already been recording for like 2 hours. I will just say that like I applaud him because he's really going out on a limb. I think he's in a position right now where he can afford it. So I think it's also like he has a bit of a responsibility to talk about it. Now I understand why some of the other stars are being a little bit quieter because with the show ending, they are in periods of transition. So I understand the business side of it, and I have empathy. Of like, hey, like you're in a difficult position being an Asian Canadian, Asian American performer. It's already hard enough. Also, then being like the mouthpiece, right? Like to sort of like project a little bit of the negative stereotype that would go along with that. Of like, oh, do we really want to hire this person? They're going to be a lightning rod for controversy, right? But Simu, we're on a first name basis now, by the way. I've decided that we're best friends. He just doesn't know yet, which sounds like something a stalker would say, and I don't disagree. But also, that's the way I'm going to choose to live my life right now. So I like he I think he's in a really good position right now with Marvel and Disney behind him, because like they're not going to drop him. They've put a lot of money into Shang-Chi, and it's coming. I have a Lego set. Like they can't pull out now. So he's in a very safe position to be a little bit controversial and step out and say stuff that's going to be controversial, but he's also right to say it. So like I do applaud him on that in using that platform that he has right now to shed some light on this, because to me the most important thing about that whole conversation is that I love Kim's Convenience. I think it's a very well-made television show. I enjoyed the hell out of it. I haven't watched the final season yet. And when I do watch the final season, it's going to be a little bit bittersweet. A, knowing that it ends, and B, now knowing what the behind the scenes look like. Yeah. And the fact that a lot of the stories, if not all of them, are white people appropriating an Asian story. Like that's what that is at the end of the day. It's colonialism on TV. And that ends up becoming a little bit of like, I don't know, like now you're in tough territory of like, how authentic are these stories now? The actors obviously bring a level of authenticity to it, and so I appreciate that part of it. But now it's like with knowing how little the Asian voice is actually represented in the writers' room, and certainly like in the above the line stuff in terms of producers and that sort of thing, like that's it's very problematic. And here I was applauding the CBC and really excited about this progressive show about an Asian Canadian family.
And it's not to undermine that it's important that those shows continue to exist and that we continue to give opportunities to creators. But they've now had 2 slip-ups, the other one being Trickster.
Exactly.
Where, exactly. Like They could do better, CBC. Like, if you have one person that you put all of your diversity eggs in one basket and then it doesn't work out, like that, maybe, maybe try to hire enough people with the same background so that when one of them moves on, you can continue to have your show because you fostered a peer, like, mentorship. And
let's just have less white dudes involved at all levels. At all levels. And that's not to say that white dudes aren't allowed to be involved in stuff, because I would love to make TV or movies or whatever, right? But at the same time, it's like, you know, like there are enough of us already. Let's give other voices some room. And certainly if we're specifically calling out that a story is an Asian Canadian story, then those voices need to be in the writer's room. They need to be producers. Like, they need, because, and the reason why is because if there were more people, if the producing, the room of producers, I don't know what you would call it, if the room full of producers looked more diverse than it did on that show, then those decisions further down the line would have been made differently. Right? Because I mean, film, like most things, is top down, and that's where those decisions are going to come from. So that's kind of the place where I think you need to focus the most, because then if you so like make Simu Liu like an executive producer on the show, right? Like, make Paul Sun-Hyung Lee a producer on the show, because then if they have a voice in that room, then when it comes to hiring writers, that voice is going to be represented better in what that writer's room ends up looking like. And it's gonna affect casting, and it's gonna affect the grips, for God's sake. Like, it'll affect all levels. And that's the way that we need to look at it, and that's what we need to do. So like you said, like with Trickster, it's like, yeah, you can't put all of your ethnic eggs in one basket. Especially in that instance, when it turned out that it was a load of crap anyways.
We're specifically referencing the Michelle Latimer, who claimed to have Indigenous heritage and turns out did not, and created a show,
crazy,
on about, like, it was an adaptation of a relatively popular Indigenous book.
But
it was a good show. It's a shame. It was a good show.
That's what I heard. And it was like one of those things that, like, I had the CBC, I was paying for CBC Gem.
Right.
And I made that decision for two reasons: because of Schitt's Creek and because of Kim's Convenience. Right.
Right.
And I had just canceled my CBC Gem already anyways. But if I hadn't, when I read what Simu posted, I would have canceled then and there, because I was specifically giving money to the CBC, $5 a month for their even though I wasn't really watching it. Like, I was just throwing money at them because I was like, well, they're doing good stuff, right? Like, I want to support them doing good stuff. And now it's like, oh, but they're not really doing good stuff. At the end of the day, just like everything else, it is just a bunch of white guys pretending. They are basically the same thing as like rainbow washing a logo, like, that's, I don't know. It's a bummer, but it is what it is. And thankfully Simu's in a position to shed some light on it, on something that we all thought was this sort of like paragon of like, and I think that as Canadians, we were all really proud of ourselves and patting ourselves on the back as a nation. We're like, hey, look at this, look at this show that, are one step away from government run broadcasting is making, right? Like I think that we all kind of took a little bit of ownership of that, because that's kind of how we feel about the CBC as a nation. And then it's just like, oh, what a bummer. It was a real high pedestal to fall off of, I think, is what I'm saying. But anyways, we've talked for a really long time. I talked most of that time. And I think that we're done. I think we did it.
We're done.
I think that's an episode.
Podcasting today. That's a lot of podcasting.
Yeah.
That's a big one. What did we even talk about? Oh, I hope there was something there.
I don't know.
Hope
like,
you enjoyed it.
This is where now I have to figure out what the title of this episode is. Yeah. And I'll sleep on it. I'll figure it out in the morning when I post this.
You know that the problem that you have now, Mike, is that I'm gonna be messaging you random title suggestions, and you're just gonna be like, "There's a reason why I don't let."
Why I've never asked for your help with this part?
Yeah. I'm happy. Give me control.
So this is a good opportunity for you to practice some empathy and think about like, how will this affect Mike if I send this message? And then just delete it.
And then don't send you my.
And then don't send it because you've practiced some empathy by putting yourself in my shoes and trying to see it from my perspective. Here's my problem with empathy. This is what we'll end on. Here's my problem with empathy. I think this is because of my personality type, because I'm a commander. I put myself in somebody else's shoes and I run through the scenario and I go like, well, that person's an idiot. So these are the stupid things that they think. And then I'm just mad at the person. And so I've practiced empathy, but unfortunately it hasn't had the effect that it's supposed to, where I'm supposed to like go like, oh yeah, now I really see it from their perspective. Instead, I end up often walking away from practicing empathy, going like, that person's perspective is stupid and I don't respect it. And I'm going to do things the way that I think that they should be done. And that's the commander personality type in a nutshell. So
that's your commander personality type in a nutshell.
You can try and hide from it, but do a little bit of soul searching.
Fair.
The thing about empathy is that it's a fake it till you make it situation. And you will, after doing it enough, it'll just start to happen automatically without thinking about it. So yeah, you just have to pretend you're empathetic, and then eventually you'll realize that you're not pretending anymore, and you actually do care about other people's feelings.
Right on.
Yeah. That's it for this episode. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Stay safe, everybody. Wash your hands and be kind to one another.
Follow the Thunderquack Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by searching the Thunderquack Podcast. You can support us in 3 ways. First, by heading to the podcast service of your choice and leaving a rating and review. Second, by going to store.thunderquack.com to pick up some merch from your favorite podcasts. And last but not least, by heading to patreon.com/thunderquack to kick in with your monthly pledge of support and get cool rewards like early access and extended episodes. The Thunderquack Podcast is the official podcast of thunderquack.com. Head to thunderquack.com to discover more great podcasts.